This week's episode is sponsored by the Ordway Center for the Performing Arts in downtown St. Paul, presenting Mandy Patinkin, Being Alive with Adam Ben David on piano on April 19th and 21st. A Tony and Emmy award-winning performer, Being Alive presents the acclaimed actor, singer, storyteller in his most electrifying role, concert performer. Being Alive is a collection of many of Mandy's favorite Broadway and classic American tunes, from Irving Berlin to Stephen Sondheim, from Cole Porter to Harry Chapin. Mandy Patinkin takes you on a dazzling musical journey you'll never forget. For tickets and more information, go to ordway.org or click the link in the show notes. Welcome to this week's Who the Folk podcast. I'm Lonnie Goldsmith, the editor of TC Folk. This week I talked to Daniel Rubinyi, an artist and the creator of the website autismandoils.com. We talk about how his autism helps him as an artist, where his passion for art comes from, and the importance of his family on this week's Who the Folk podcast. But before we hear from Daniel, check out the new and improved TC Folk merch store with newly designed hats, shirts, stickers, and tote bags that help you look fun and stylish and help support TC Folk's mission at the same time. Check it out at tcjufolk.com/store. Daniel Rubinyi, welcome to the Who the Folk podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Welcome.
So you are an artist. Mm-hmm. We are sitting here in this recording space where you have brought a couple of your pieces of art with, which is very calming. It makes it a much more relaxing feel to it than it usually is. You have a fascinating website called Autism and Oils. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about the site and your artwork and how it sort of came together.
Well, I started artwork when I was really young, just always into art, always drawing, always watercoloring, whatever I could get my hands on. My folks were always very do what you feel like doing, that kind of stuff. But it really came together more in my 20s with autism. You need a lot of time to vent and express what's going on. There's all this, autism is basically taking in a lot of information at once that you cannot filter. A lot of times is the best way to put it. So there was a lot of, not overstimulation. I didn't have the things where I'd have freakouts or anything, but it's information. So the way that I really found a way to vent and express myself was through art, and I found the best way was through feelings. So in my early 20s, I went to a little bit of an art program for a while where they let me do what I wanted to do. I didn't really get into that, and where it fully started off is during the pandemic.
Okay, how so?
Things got a lot more tough. I really wanted to focus on oil painting. The work wasn't as sociable anymore. What I was doing, I was at Trader Joe's.
Okay.
So I started to paint, and I found stuff. And then towards the end of the pandemic, I'm like, hey, I want to get more into it. And I'm like, hey, I just want to catch up on art. So I had an art teacher, again, sort of immerse me in what I liked. And I sort of got to these different styles. And it started off sort of like little paint blotches, more pointillism or impressionism kind of stuff.
Sure.
And then gravitated towards more less than pointillism and impressionism to more feeling. And post-impressionism is more about the feeling than impressionism is.
Okay. So one of the things you read on your website, which I found really sort of interesting, that I feel like helped explain a lot, was that you see the world through a different / autistic lens, and the world is abstract with a twist that surprises many and is not neurotypical.
Oh, cool.
How what does that mean? How would you explain that to somebody?
It's sort of it's sort of like an improv thing, right? You go flowers, and then you go is it going to be green, red? Is it going to have a swirl? Is it going to have this, that kind of thing? But then you have a little bit of attention deficit in there with the autism, and it's sort of okay, maybe I want to do this instead of that. So you have that structure, but at the same time, you have that wanting to do something else. And so it sort of morphs its way into sort of this feeling and this energetic feel, but has a calming motivation to it.
And the work is calming. That's like both what I've noticed on your website and the pieces you brought in. Are there different, like, do you like landscapes, plants, sort of general whatever pops into your head? What sort of drives you as an artist as you look to
I've done over 400 pieces of work, and it's it really depends on like the mood, the feel. Do I want to like you know, I didn't like I played Magic cards as a kid a lot, so sometimes I'll want to go more creatures, or sometimes I might want to go more landscapes. But I do gravitate more towards landscapes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it places that you visited that you're like trying to recreate in a way?
My memory is very good. So yeah, some of them are going to be more realistic, where some of them are going to look more like this. Like I have this one in here right now, and I was like thinking to myself, I'm like, ooh, windmill. How could I alter this windmill so it would look more relaxing and have a flow to it instead of just a windmill?
Right, because a windmill itself, and again, this is an audio medium, so I think we're talking about artwork.
Work that we can't see.
That's
but
right.
If you can imagine a windmill with sort of like an ebb and flow to it, instead of just sort of like the little notches on the side like you'd see on a field or something.
Correct. Like those are, you see them, you're starting to see them more and more. And it's funny, I looked at this piece and I see a windmill, but I could also see like broad leaves of a plant that are twisted.
Mm-hmm. So it's all in the eye of the beholder. I used to write definitions all the time, all this stuff, and now I just do it for fun, just sort of like stories that will go along with it too. But it's really what you want to make the painting feel like. Whether it's called windmill or not, art is really about expression. So it's about how you feel about a painting, not so much how I will feel about a painting.
Did it bother you at all if people tried to interpret or define a piece of work differently than you had intended it?
It's interesting because like I have my perception, they have their perception, but it's like a new story begins with every single different description of what someone says. Sometimes there will be multiple different things that people say it looks like, and then like occasionally, so it's sort of like a fun game in a way, because sometimes someone will have one description, like I said, or maybe it will be like 2 or 3 descriptions on what something looks like.
It's fascinating. How does I guess, how do people receive your art as you create these pieces? What are their, what kind of feedback do you get?
I get that it's unique. I get that it's something they really haven't seen before. A lot of people have asked, hey, wouldn't that look good on a t-shirt? Or maybe I could have a print of it or try to paint like that, but I don't know how.
Yeah. So how would you encourage someone who's wouldn't consider themselves artistic or have only sort of dabbled a little bit into paintings? How would you encourage someone to sort of take the next step?
It's just starting. A lot of people say little doodles, little things. It's really what, you feel like going for. If you feel like more like color, go start. Acrylics are a good way to start. I didn't get into oils until I was about like 22 years of age.
Okay.
It started with acrylics, and if we may get into it, I first fell in love with oils when I saw Van Gogh, and I was like, Van Gogh has all these thick texture things, and so I started out very thick, and then I sort of became into my own style, but Van Gogh was what really got me going.
I mean, Van Gogh's work is incredible.
Incredible? It is, but here's the thing, is that I've actually found, if you follow stuff, I find more color-based stuff instead of thickness-based stuff. So I'll be more color-oriented, like maybe Renoir or something.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, you've picked obviously fabulous inspirations in those artists.
Yes.
So you mentioned acrylics, you mentioned oils. Those are words I know. But what is the difference when it comes to working with them? Because Like, I can see art and be like, oh, that's really nice.
Nice.
Or be like, maybe that's not my speed. But from a medium standpoint, obviously oils are your chosen favorite. How do you explain the difference of working with acrylics versus oils to somebody like me who has no idea what it's like to work with them?
So acrylics are, in a sense, liquid plastic. Um, Depending on how processed things are and whatnot, but they dry really quickly.
Okay.
So you can't like smear something or move an oil, which it takes finesse. It's more you paint, it dries. You paint over it, it dries. You paint over it, it dries. So you can do multiple layers, where in oils you only can do a few or like 3 or 4 layers at a time.
I think with acrylics, because it dries so fast, it may be harder to blend or fix a mistake or tweak something.
No, acrylics, you can add water to it, water acrylics. You can smear it like oils. Problem being is that it doesn't give the same texture and luminosity as what an oil would give.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Still great color. You can get good color. A lot of people use golden, and I have a friend who uses golden, which
Okay.
is a type of acrylic, and it has the same color as oil paints, but you can still tell with the sheen that it's more liquid plastic instead of an oily texture.
Interesting. Okay. That made sense. See, that was well explained because I really do know nothing about the different mediums and how you work with them. Is there a medium that you haven't worked with yet that you would like to explore?
People talk about gouache. I don't know anything about it. It's
Okay.
sort of like an acrylic that dries even quicker or something, I've been told.
Oh, okay.
But I'm hoping to get more into, honestly, a little bit of, crayons, oil crayons, kind of is what they are.
Oh, sure.
You know, they sort of have they're called pastels, if
Okay.
you want. It is the more commonly
Yes. That
form.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
With pastels, from what I know, is you move it like oils, except you use your hands. You sort of spread it about. That's how you get the textures.
Interesting. Okay. That's really cool. So where do you show your work anywhere? You've been in exhibits?
Yeah. I've been in multiple juried shows. Some of them were at Brookview and Golden Valley.
Oh, yeah.
Another one was in St. Louis Park at I can't remember the nature center's name in St. Louis Park, but
Westwood?
Westwood, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Westwood Nature Center. So I've been there as well. I've been in multiple exhibits at Hopkins Center for the Arts. I'm actually going to be at a members exhibit. I'm going to have 2 paintings up for sale at that point in time.
Where and when is that?
I believe, from what I recall, I need to get my paintings in by April, but it will be April through May, as I recall.
And where at that?
Hopkins Center for the Arts. It's on Main Street in Hopkins.
Yep. No, that is a great venue. I've seen many shows at stages that are there, and it's a great place to exhibit art. One of the other really interesting things you do is you also work at Bet Shalom at the Yeladin Preschool. How did you get started there?
I was working in retail for a very long time, and I was like, I just want to change the scenery. And, people said, hey, I had a job before with kids, and I've worked with kids before. I'm like, this might be a good change of pace.
Yeah.
And so someone brought it up, like I said, and it just it was a volunteer thing at first. And then I'm like, hey, I actually really enjoy spending time with kids. There's a fascination that kids are more, kids don't have a long-term, short-term memory. That doesn't really come in until you're in about your teenage years.
Yeah.
They forgive, they forget, they don't hold on to things a lot, and I found that very sobering because working with the public, people hold on to things with with vigor. Like just nothing
Yes, they
against
do.
nothing against customers. I mean, I get it. I'm in a bad mood. You're in a bad mood. We're going to have a little thing
Yes.
or whatever. And that sort of gravitates. We talk about it a lot in psychology. Is if someone's in a bad mood, most likely they're going to sort of be contagious and get you in the bad mood.
For sure.
Yeah.
And working in public spaces like it, you mentioned you worked at Trader Joe's. It's I've shopped at Trader Joe's on a Saturday or Sunday morning. It can be a rough space for everybody.
Oh yeah, no, it can. It's always putting a smile on, even if you're not happy, always being positive. I very much, to the people who work in those situations, I have a lot of admiration for them because it's a tough task, and I think they should get paid more.
Yeah, it is not an easy work environment. Customers can be difficult to deal with sometimes. And you gotta, like you said, you always gotta have a smile on your face, even if the customer's in a bad mood, even if you're not feeling at your best.
It's sort of like being a local celebrity. You gotta put on that smile because everybody knows who you are and what you present yourself as.
And I can certainly understand why working there when the pandemic hit and needing some sort of activity or interaction with others was really important. I think we all sort of felt it in a way during that time.
Oh yeah, no, it's people are literally sociable beings. So being secluded, even if we're an introvert or we're an extrovert, it doesn't matter. We all need to have some sort of social interaction. And when distance from that, it really takes a toll on all of us, I think.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. You mentioned before we started recording that you're studying psychology.
Although not studying, but
You're reading up on it?
Reading up on it, we'll say.
Okay, so this is like just a side thing on your own.
Yeah, just side thing on my own. As being autistic, human behavior sort of fascinated me because I was always this person who just couldn't relate. And so a lot of autistic people actually do study like what humans do, how they present themselves. Not like I'm reading you or anything, but like just saying I want to make sense of the world.
Sure. Do you feel like you've been able to do that and sort of how you, either with or because of your autism, you fit in the world a little bit differently because you've done that sort of reading up?
Yeah, I find that I sort of just fit in a little bit better than most people on the spectrum. Like they talk about it, and it's like, honestly, you can't really tell from just talking to me unless you fully in depth have a conversation with me on a personal level. You aren't going to be able to tell that I'm like, autistic.
No. I mean, yes, going to your website before I reached out to you, the website does sort of give it away.
It does give it away. Yeah, you're right. It does give it away. But I'm hoping to get more awareness that we are all different on the spectrum. And so many of us try to familiarize with everyone who's on the spectrum. The only familiarity that we really have is that we're on the spectrum. Everything is different. Our brains are all wired different. We have some consistencies with how we may act or how we may present ourselves, but we are all an individual and are same.
I really appreciate the way you sort of put that out there because, I think it's really, to me, no different from people who aren't on the spectrum. Everybody is different. Everybody is wired a little bit differently. Everybody is their own person. And I think it's important that people get to know you for who you are and know that just because you're on the spectrum, you are not the same as somebody else who's on the spectrum. You all, you function, you do different things, you act differently than somebody else might.
Exactly.
That's well put. I certainly appreciate that.
A lot of, I don't want to get too much on it, but yeah, just growing up was always interesting with family. Speaking of Bet Shalom, this has been in our family for years. We've gone there for years. And so every single, until age 13, every single kid, which we had 3 in the family, would go on Sunday to religious school, and we talk about it. I believe that religion is very important, but it's a stance on not just whatever your religion might be. It doesn't matter if you're Jewish or Christian, whatever your beliefs are. It's a belief that something matters more than yourself.
Yeah.
And so I found going to religious school that I found something mattered more than myself. I was able to also not just relate through psychology, but relate through a stance of, hey, people are the way they are, and we need to accept them for who they are.
Do you feel that you were accepted as you are?
I felt in that setting I was very much accepted for who I was.
Okay.
I think there's sometimes less acceptance and more acceptance depending on which religious setting you're in and who you are as a person. It goes back into the whole thing of that it depends who you are, who you click with, but I've always been a very personable person, so that has really helped me along a lot.
That's excellent. And you know what? Every situation is going to be different to every person is different, so your interaction with one person may be great, and the next time you interact with them,
It might not,
you never know.
Someone might be mad, or someone might be angry. Who knows?
Yep.
It's all what is human interaction, know.
That's at 100%.
I have my down days too. It may not seem like it, but yes, I do.
We all it may not seem like it now, but this setting is not the usual. Like, I fully acknowledge, like, you and I are sitting here, we got microphones set up. We're talking about you and your work, and it's you clearly love your work, and so it's easy to feel up and feel good when it comes to that. But like, we all have bad days. We all have tough days.
Agreed.
Doesn't say anything about you as a person. It's just.
It just is what it is.
It just is what it is.
Something that I found that has really helped me is being someone who is a little bit more intelligent with certain stuff. I had to learn from other people, and I found my siblings taught me a lot about how the world works, and my older brother said something to me that I used to be like, what am I going to do the next day? What am I going to do the next day? What am I going to do the day after? And now it's more be in the moment, feel the moment, know that the next day will come along and we'll process it at that time. And I think that's really helped me as someone on the spectrum sort of get less overwhelmed with how life, presents itself. I mean, that could be said for many people, but especially me.
No, and it could be said about many people, but like this is about you, and it's like what works for you and helps you best get through from day to day, and I think that matters. You mentioned your siblings. There are 4 of you in your household. How where are you in the? You mentioned you have at least one older sibling. Where are you in the order of the 4?
I'm second oldest.
Okay.
But we just sort of like, we leaned on each other, relied on each other. Mom and Dad were always really hardworking. They spent time with us when they could. Normally it was at dinner time or maybe helping us with some homework. But with the siblings, we sort of came to sort of this mutual agreement that we'd support each other through thick and thin. And I think that's really helped us as we're adults sort of become, better people in general, just sort of coming to that agreement.
As someone who is autistic and on the spectrum, do you feel like that's helped you even more, knowing that you have that support system from your siblings?
Yeah. Like, in general, people, and this is not to be said for a one-person family, but it's harder for someone to gain social skills when they don't have at least one other sibling to converse with. So I had 3 siblings to converse with. My older brother, I wasn't always like this. My older brother always put me in check. So what that meant is if I was acting weird, or not weird, but like I was saying things that weren't socially whatever acceptable or something, he'd go, Daniel, you can't say that. You gotta own up to what you're doing. You gotta own up to what you're saying and how you're saying it. So he kept me in check, and my sister, who was a little bit younger than me, was always a supportive person of my art interests and my stuff. And then my younger brother, he was sort of like one of my best friends. He would he'd play like Magic the Gathering with me, or Yu-Gi-Oh, and he'd indulge me on my interests, whatever it might have been. So they all had their part to play, but every single person in my family would have a conversation with me, which made me better equipped to dealing with the world.
Okay. Well, that's excellent. I mean, it's very clear that it helped, because this has been a fascinating conversation. Daniel, last 2 questions that we always end this podcast on. First, what is your favorite Jewish holiday?
I gotta say Rosh Hashanah. I love the apples and honey.
Apples and honey is great.
It always depends on which honey. I mean, like if you go, I think the mamuka honey, getting like just a little bit of that tends to have more of a sweet flavor, in my opinion. A little bit of it, depending on what you get and how your taste.
And the apples also make a difference.
Yeah, no, Honeycrisp all the way. You can go Granny Smith, but it doesn't have the same flavor with the honey.
No, I get that. No disagreement there. Yeah. And what is your favorite Jewish food?
Oh God, my mom makes this amazing matzo ball soup. Okay. Like amazing. People rave about it. Like who come over, they're like, we need to have this matzo ball soup. And like it's interesting because she cooks it in chicken broth. So she makes, I probably shouldn't like spill the beans, but she cooks it with chicken. So she does the chicken, and then she takes the chicken out, and she puts with the chicken broth in it, and then puts the matzo balls in.
Oh, so she cooks it in the soup.
So the chicken fat gets to be cooked in with the matzo ball.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's her secret though, but as they say, she's a very loving person. So, they say food tastes better when it's made with love, and I truly do believe that.
I wholeheartedly agree. Daniel Rubinyi, thank you so much. This has been a fascinating conversation. Your art is beautiful. We will put a link to your website where people can explore your work a little more in the show notes. But thank you again for coming in and joining me. This has been fabulous.
Welcome. Pleasure as well.
The Who the Folk podcast is a part of the Jew Folk Podcast Network and a product of Jew Folk Inc. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. If you have suggestions for other podcast guests, please email them to me at editor@tcjewfolk.com. For our other shows, check out tcjewfolk.com/podcast.